Marcus Williams's fist connected with the marble conference table so hard, the water glasses jumped. "You're lying." 4 bodyguards moved forward instantly, hands inside their jackets, but the woman across from him, designer suit, cold eyes Marcus had never seen her before in his life, didn't even flinch. "Mr. Williams, I assure you my father was many things, but generous to strangers was not one of them." Her voice could have cut glass. "You manipulated a dying old man, and I will prove it in court." "I served him coffee." Marcus's voice cracked. "That's it. I served him coffee and talked to him like he was a human being. And he left you $9 billion. She leaned forward, her smile sharp as a knife. "So either you're a con artist or you're dangerously naive about what you've just inherited. Either way, Mr. Williams, you just became the most hated man in New York City." The silver-haired lawyer placed a folder on the table between them. "This is your daughter Zoe's school schedule, her walking route home, the park where she plays on Saturdays." He paused. "You should know that Mrs. Lancaster's legal team isn't the only one watching you now." Marcus's blood turned to ice. 3 weeks earlier, Marcus had no idea that the lonely old man sitting in the corner of his diner was Theodore Lancaster, billionaire recluse, and according to his daughter, a man who trusted no one. He had no idea that every cup of coffee, every conversation, every moment with his daughter Zoe was being recorded, analyzed, tested. And he definitely had no idea that passing Theodore's test would make him the target of people who played for stakes. Marcus couldn't even comprehend. But none of that mattered anymore, because Theodore was dead. And Marcus Williams, single father, struggling waiter, good man in a hard world, had just inherited an empire, along with every enemy that came with it. Comment below what city you're watching from, so I can see how far this story has traveled. The coffee machine died at 4:32 a.m. with a sound like a mechanical death rattle. No. No, no, no. Marcus slammed the side panel. Nothing. The machine was 40 years old and had been threatening to quit for months. But of course, it picked this morning, Tuesday, start of the week, biggest breakfast rush, to finally give up. "Dead?" Ronnie called from the grill. "Dead. Raymond's gonna lose his mind. Raymond can afford a new one. He just won't buy one." Marcus grabbed the backup pot, ancient slow-made coffee that tasted like regret. "I'll make it work." He always made it work. That was his specialty. Making things work with duct tape and determination when they should have fallen apart years ago. The coffee maker, the diner, his life. His phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Kim, his neighbor who watched Zoe in the mornings. "She's still sleeping. Breathing good last night. Used inhaler once." Relief flooded through him. Zoe's asthma had been bad lately. The medication helped, but it cost $143 a month, and insurance covered exactly none of it. Last month, he'd had to choose between the inhaler and the electric bill. He'd chosen the inhaler. They'd spent 3 days without power before he scraped together enough to get it turned back on. His daughter could breathe. That was what mattered. Everything else was just logistics. "You okay?" Ronnie cracked eggs one-handed, not looking up. "Why does everyone keep asking me that?" "Because you got that look. The one where you're doing math in your head and none of it's adding up." Marcus grabbed a knife, started chopping onions with aggressive precision. Ronnie wasn't wrong. The math never added up. $2,400 a month from the diner. $1,800 for rent in a neighborhood that was technically safe if you didn't count the drug dealers on the corner. $800 for Mrs. Kim and after-school care. $140 for medication. Another $200 for food if he was very, very careful. He was $500 short. Every single month. Credit cards were maxed. He owed 3 months on 2 of them. The letters were getting more threatening. His landlord, Mrs. Patterson, had started taping final notice in red ink on his door. "How's Zoe?" Ronnie asked. "She's 7. She draws pictures of dragons. She asks me why we can't go to the movies like her friends. She tells me about school like it's the most important thing in the world." His throat tightened. "She's perfect. I'm the problem. Man, I'm failing her. The words came out harder than he meant. Her mother walked away because this life wasn't good enough. You think Zoe doesn't notice she's 7, not stupid. She knows we're broke. She knows I'm one bad day away from losing everything. Ronnie's spatula paused. Shanice didn't leave because of money. No, she left because I wasn't enough. The life I could give her wasn't enough. And now I'm raising our daughter alone in a 1-bedroom apartment where the heat barely works, and I can't afford to take her to a doctor when she's sick. You take her to the clinic. The free clinic where we wait 4 hours, and they treat us like charity cases. Marcus swept the onions into a container. You know what Zoe asked me last week? She asked if Mommy didn't come back because of her. 7 years old and she thinks she's the reason her mother abandoned her. What did you tell her? I lied. I said Mommy loves her very much but needed to find herself. Marcus's laugh was bitter. Find herself. Shanice found herself all right. Found herself a tech bro in San Francisco and a brand new life where she doesn't have to think about the daughter she left behind. The anger surprised him. 3 years since Shanice had walked out. 3 years since he'd found that note on the fridge. I'm sorry, Marcus. I can't do this anymore. You're better at being a parent than I ever was, and the rage could still catch him off guard. We open in 20 minutes, Marcus said, changing the subject with all the subtlety of a hammer. I need to set up the coffee stations. The Riverside Diner opened at 5:30. By 5:47, Frank Delgado was in his usual booth construction vest, still on newspaper already spread out. Coffee. Marcus poured. How's the site? Behind schedule. Over budget. The usual. Frank didn't look up. 2 eggs over easy. Rye toast. You know the drill. Got it. 6:15 the morning rush hit. Marcus moved through the narrow space between tables like a man who'd memorized every inch 3 steps to table 4. Pivot left to avoid the support column 2 steps to the counter. Reach over to grab the coffee pot without looking. 4 years he'd been doing this. 4 years since he'd quit his job as a line cook at Antoine's, the upscale French restaurant, where he'd been on track to make sous chef. 4 years since he'd traded his chef's whites for a waiter's apron, because single fathers didn't get to work nights and weekends. His feet hurt. The cheap sneakers from Payless were falling apart, the sole on the right, one had a hole straight through. His back ached. He was 32 years old and felt 50. But Zoe needed him at 3:15 every day when school let out. She needed dinner and homework help, and someone to check her breathing at night. She needed a father who showed up. So he showed up. 7:15. The door chimed. Marcus didn't need to look at the clock. He knew the time by the way the diner seemed to pause just for a second as the old man walked in. Tap, tap, tap. The sound of his cane hitting linoleum was like a metronome, steady and precise. He shuffled slowly each step, careful, deliberate, toward the back corner table by the window. The worst seat in the house. The radiator underneath clanked like it was angry. The window had a draft that made it 10 degrees colder than the rest of the diner. No one else wanted that table. But every morning at 7:15 the old man sat down, ordered the same thing, ate in complete silence, and left by 8:30 without speaking to anyone. Marcus had started calling him the professor in his head. Maybe 75, maybe 80, hard to tell. Thin frame swimming in a worn tweed jacket. Wire-rimmed glasses. Pale blue eyes that looked through everything like he was seeing a different world than everyone else. Morning, sir. Marcus approached with a menu. Coffee? The professor nodded without looking up. Never looked up. Never spoke. Marcus poured black coffee, set it down with the handle at precisely the right angle. Small thing. Stupid thing, probably. But something about the old man's profound loneliness made Marcus want to offer something, anything, even if it was just a properly positioned coffee cup. I'll get your order in. No response. There never was. You wasting time on the ghost again? Ronnie asked when Marcus reached the kitchen window. He's a paying customer. He tips exactly 10%, takes up a 4-top for 90 minutes during breakfast rush. Raymond's gonna make you move him to the counter eventually. Let him try. Why do you care about some old man who won't even talk to you? Marcus didn't have a good answer. Something about watching the professor sit there alone every morning staring out that drafty window at a city that had clearly forgotten he existed made Marcus's chest hurt. Recognition, maybe. He understood loneliness. Understood what it felt like to be in a room full of people and still be completely invisible. So he brought the oatmeal with honey on the side, exactly how the old man liked it. Wheat toast cut diagonally because the professor's hands shook and he couldn't manage a knife. Fresh coffee without being asked. Small gestures. Cost him nothing. Seemed to mean something. 3 weeks into the routine, the professor spoke. Marcus was refilling his coffee when the old man's voice, rough, unused, barely above a whisper, cut through the ambient diner noise. You have a child. Marcus nearly dropped the pot. Yes, sir. A daughter. The professor's pale eyes fixed on him with sudden, startling intensity. What's her name? Zoe. She's 7. You raise her alone. The question was invasive. Personal. Marcus should have deflected. But something in the old man's face, hunger maybe, or desperation, made him answer honestly. Yes, sir. Her mother left when she was 4. It's just the 2 of us. The professor nodded slowly. That's hard. We manage. Do you... Those pale eyes pinned him. Do you really manage? The perceptiveness of the question stole Marcus's breath. No, he wanted to say. No, I'm drowning. I'm one emergency away from homelessness. I'm so tired I fall asleep standing up. I'm terrified every day that I'm not enough for her. But you didn't say those things to strangers. We manage, Marcus repeated. Can I get you anything else? The professor studied him for a long moment, then shook his head. When Marcus cleared the table an hour later, there was a $10 bill under the coffee cup. The meal cost $8.50, 20% tip. The next day, the professor asked about Zoe's school. The day after, about her health. Brief questions, intense listening, like Marcus's words were scripture. The tips got better. 15%, 20, 25. Your boyfriend's here, Ronnie teased one morning when the professor walked in. Shut up. I'm just saying old man's watching you like you're the most interesting thing in his world. Marcus didn't know what to make of it, but he recognized something in those pale eyes. Loneliness so deep it had weight. 6 weeks in, everything changed. Marcus's phone rang at 6:43 a.m. Mrs. Kim panicked. Marcus, I'm so sorry, my daughter's in labor. I have to go to the hospital. Go. Go be with your family. He hung up and stared at his phone, running calculations with no solution. School started at 8:30. Diner opened at 5:30. No backup, no safety net. Ronnie, I need 30 minutes. Raymond's gonna kill you. Then I die. Cover for me. He wasn't fast enough. By the time he got back with Zoe, her backpack bouncing her hand tight in his. It was 7:21, and Raymond was waiting by the register, arms crossed. Williams, my office, now. Mr. Holloway, my sitter had an emergency. I don't pay you to have emergencies. Raymond's eyes flicked to Zoe with open disgust. I definitely don't pay you to run a daycare. She'll sit quietly. She won't bother anyone. She better not, and you better work twice as fast or we're having a serious conversation about your future here. Marcus wanted to tell him exactly where to shove his future, but he had $73 in checking and a daughter who needed medicine. Yes, sir. He settled Zoe at a table near the kitchen with her coloring books. Be good, baby girl. Daddy has to work. Okay, Daddy. Her eyes were so wide, so serious. She never complained. Never. Like she knew they were barely hanging on and was trying not to make it worse. The rush was brutal. Marcus was behind on everything, coffee orders, clearing tables. Frank needed a refill. Table 4 was waiting. The woman at the counter kept checking her watch and sighing loudly. 7:15. The door chimed. The professor walked in. Marcus intercepted him. "Sir, I'm so sorry I'm running behind." But the professor wasn't looking at him. His gaze had locked onto something across the diner, his pale eyes widening, his hand gripping his cane until his knuckles went white. Marcus turned. Zoe. His daughter was watching them, crayon-frozen mid-air, curious. The professor's face went pale. His hands started shaking. For a moment, Marcus thought he might collapse. "Sir, are you okay?" "That's your daughter." The old man's voice was barely audible. "Yes, sir." "What's she drawing?" "Probably dragons. She loves dragons." The professor stood frozen. Then he did something Marcus had never seen in 6 weeks. He walked over to Zoe's table. Marcus followed, protective. The professor lowered himself into the chair across from her, movements stiff with age and something else. Pain, maybe, or grief. "Hello," he said quietly. Zoe looked at Marcus. Marcus nodded. "Hi, I'm Zoe. Are you my daddy's friend?" "I don't know. Maybe I could be." The professor's voice was thick. "What are you drawing?" "A castle. See. The princess lives here, and the dragons protect her." "That's beautiful. How old are you, Zoe?" 7. "How old are you?" "Zoe," Marcus said, mortified. The professor's mouth twitched, almost smiled. 79. Very, very old. "Do you have kids?" "I had a son, and a grandson." The old man's hands trembled. "They're both gone now." "Oh." Zoe processed this with childlike gravity. "That's really sad. I'm sorry." "Thank you." "Do you want to color with me?" "Coloring makes me feel better when I'm sad." And Marcus watched, stunned, as the silent old man who'd barely spoken in 6 weeks settled in with his 7-year-old daughter and carefully colored dragon wings, while Zoe chattered about school friends, books, her daddy's cooking. The professor didn't just listen. He engaged, asked questions, told her about medieval dragons and Chinese dragons, helped her spell night. His hands still shook, but they stayed inside the lines. At 8:15, Zoe yawned and slumped against the table, exhausted. The professor carefully took off his tweed jacket and draped it over her shoulders. "Let her sleep," he told Marcus. "I'll watch her while you work." "Sir, please." So Marcus worked while the professor kept vigil, his weathered hand near Zoe's head like a blessing. At 9:30, Zoe woke. The professor bought her hot chocolate and a donut. When Marcus protested, the old man's look allowed no argument. Let an old man have this. Before leaving 2 hours late, the professor knelt and shook Zoe's hand with grave courtesy. "It was an honor to meet you, Miss Zoe. You're remarkable. You're nice. Will you come back tomorrow?" 7:15, just like always. He turned to Marcus, tears in his pale eyes. "You have a beautiful daughter. You're raising her right. I hope you know that." No one had ever said that to Marcus. Not once in 3 years. "Thank you," he whispered. The professor walked away, tap, 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 and Marcus stood there holding Zoe's hand, feeling something shift. He had no idea the old man was Theodore Lancaster, worth $9 billion. He had no idea their meeting was orchestrated, that Theodore had spent 6 weeks testing him. And he had no idea that 3 weeks later, 4 bodyguards would walk into the diner and detonate his entire world. But that morning, Marcus only knew this: a lonely old man had been kind to his daughter, had truly seen him, and said the words he'd needed for 3 years. "You're doing it right." And for the first time since everything fell apart, Marcus felt something dangerous bloom in his chest. 3 weeks and 2 days later, the professor didn't come. Marcus noticed immediately. 7:15 came and went. No tap of a cane on linoleum. No tweed jacket shuffling toward the corner table. No pale blue eyes looking for him through the morning chaos. By 7:30, Marcus had refilled Frank's coffee 3 times without being asked and delivered the wrong order to table 6. His hands felt clumsy, his focus scattered. You okay? Ronnie called through the kitchen window. Yeah, fine. He wasn't fine. Something felt wrong. The professor had come every single day for 8 weeks straight. Rain, snow, heat wave didn't matter. 7:15 clockwork, precise. By 8 o'clock, Marcus couldn't ignore the knot in his stomach anymore. He pulled out his phone during a brief lull and did something he'd never done before. Googled Theodore Lancaster, elderly New York. His phone froze, then loaded. The first result was from the New York Times, posted 4 hours ago. Theodore Lancaster, industrial titan and recluse, dead at 79. Marcus's vision tunneled. The phone nearly slipped from his hands. Dead. The Professor Theodore was dead. He read the article in fragments, his brain struggling to process the words. Founder of Lancaster Global Industries. Net worth estimated at $9 billion. Died peacefully in his sleep Sunday night. Survived by daughter Margaret Chen and grandson Justin Lancaster. Private funeral arrangements pending. $9 billion. The lonely old man who sat in the corner booth and colored dragons with Zoe had been worth $9 billion. Marcus! Ronnie's voice cut through the shock. Order up! Marcus shoved the phone in his pocket and grabbed the plates with shaking hands. He moved through the rest of his shift on autopilot, pouring coffee, taking orders, smiling at customers while his mind spun in useless circles. Theodore was dead. The one person in 3 years who'd looked at Marcus and said, "You're doing it right," was gone. At 2:15, Marcus clocked out and walked the 6 blocks to Zoe's school in a daze. The autumn air was crisp, the leaves turning orange and gold, and everything felt surreal, like the world should have stopped but hadn't bothered to notice. Zoe came running out at 3:15, backpack bouncing, her face lighting up when she saw him. "Daddy?" He caught her in a hug and held on tighter than usual. "You're squishing me," she laughed. "Sorry, baby girl." He loosened his grip. "How was school?" "Good. We learned about the solar system. Did you know Jupiter has 79 moons? That's so many moons, Daddy. Why does Jupiter get so many and we only get one?" Marcus listened to her chatter about planets and moons and her friend Keisha, who brought homemade cookies for lunch, and he didn't tell her about Theodore. Didn't tell her that the nice old man who'd colored with her and bought her hot chocolate was gone. She'd ask about him eventually. When he didn't show up at the diner. When she asked if she could color with him again. Marcus would have to find the words then. They were halfway home when his phone rang. Unknown number. Manhattan area code. "Hello. Mr. Marcus Williams." The voice was male, professional, with the kind of crisp authority that made working people nervous. "Speaking. My name is Philip Anderson. I'm a senior partner at Peterson & Associates. I'm calling regarding the estate of Theodore Lancaster." Marcus stopped walking. Zoe tugged his hand, but he stood frozen on the sidewalk. I saw the news this morning. I'm very sorry for your loss." "Thank you. Mr. Williams, I understand you were acquainted with Mr. Lancaster." "I served him breakfast at the Riverside Diner. He came in every morning." "Yes, I'm aware." There was a pause. "Mr. Lancaster left specific instructions regarding his estate. You're named as a beneficiary. I need to schedule a meeting with you to discuss the details." Marcus's brain stuttered. "I'm sorry, what?" "You're named in Mr. Lancaster's will. I can't discuss the details over the phone, but I need you to come to our offices tomorrow morning at 9 a.m. Can you make that time?" I work. I have a shift." "Mr. Williams, I strongly advise you to take the morning off. This is extremely time-sensitive and the matter is substantial." Substantial. The word hung in the air like a threat. "Okay, yes, I can be there." Anderson gave him the address, a building in the financial district that Marcus had never had reason to enter, and hung up. Marcus stood on the sidewalk, phone still pressed to his ear, while Zoe tugged his hand. "Daddy, who was that?" "I don't know, baby." He looked down at her worried face. "But I think something just changed." That night, after Zoe was asleep, Marcus sat at his kitchen table and Googled Theodore Lancaster until his eyes burned. The search results painted a picture of a man Marcus didn't recognize. Corporate titan, ruthless negotiator recluse, who'd avoided public life for the last 20 years after his son and grandson died in a car accident. There were photos. Theodore in his 50s, standing in a boardroom looking powerful and intimidating. Theodore in his 60s at a charity gala. His wife Margaret, beside him, a beautiful woman with kind eyes, who'd died of cancer 15 years ago. And then nothing. No photos after age 65. Like he'd disappeared from public life entirely. The man in those photos looked nothing like the professor. That Theodore had been strong, confident, commanding. The professor had been fragile, lonely, broken. What had happened in those missing years? Marcus fell asleep at the table, his head on his arms, and dreamed of pale blue eyes and the tap-tap-tap of a cane. The next morning, he called in sick to work for the first time in 4 years. Raymond was furious. "You're already on thin ice, Williams." But Marcus hung up before he could finish the threat. He dropped Zoe at school and took the subway to the financial district, his stomach churning with every stop. The building where Peterson and Associates had their offices was glass and steel, all gleaming surfaces, and people in expensive suits, moving with purpose. Marcus looked down at his own clothes, clean jeans, his nicest shirt shoes he'd polished last night, and felt like an imposter. The elevator to the 42nd floor was silent, except for the soft classical music piping through hidden speakers. Marcus's reflection stared back at him from the polished walls, a tired-looking 32-year-old who was way out of his depth. The receptionist directed him to a conference room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city. Marcus had never been this high up before. The view made him dizzy. "Mr. Williams." A man in his late 50s entered, silver hair, perfectly styled suit, probably worth more than Marcus made in 6 months. "I'm Philip Anderson. Thank you for coming." They shook hands. Anderson's grip was firm, assessing. "Can I get you coffee? Water?" "I'm fine, thank you." "Thank yous." "Please sit." Marcus sat in a leather chair that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Anderson settled across from him and opened a folder. "Before we begin, I need to verify your identity." He slid a form across the table. "Driver's license, social security number, current address." Marcus filled it out with shaking hands. Anderson checked everything against whatever was in his file, then nodded. "Good. Now, Mr. Williams, I'm going to be direct with you because time is of the essence. Theodore Lancaster's will is unconventional. There are multiple parties involved, and the reading is scheduled for tomorrow morning at 10 a.m. I need you to be there." "I don't understand. Why would Mr. Lancaster leave me anything? I just served him breakfast." Anderson's expression was unreadable. "Mr. Lancaster was very specific in his instructions. He wanted you present at the reading. Beyond that, I can't tell you anything until tomorrow." "Can you at least tell me—" Marcus swallowed hard. "Is it money? Because I can't afford a lawyer if someone's going to contest." "Mr. Williams." Anderson leaned forward slightly. "I've been practicing estate law for 30 years. I have never seen a will quite like Theodore Lancaster's. Whatever you're imagining, I assure you it's bigger than that." Marcus's hands went cold. "How much bigger?" "Tomorrow. 10 a.m. Bring identification." Anderson stood, signaling the meeting was over. "And Mr. Williams, I'd advise you not to discuss this with anyone until after the reading. The other beneficiaries are complicated." Marcus rode the subway home in a fog. His phone buzzed text from Raymond. "You better be dying or you're fired." He stared at the message for a long moment, then put the phone away without answering. That night, he barely slept. Zoe asked why he was so quiet during dinner, and he told her he wasn't feeling well. Not a lie exactly. His stomach had been in knots since Anderson's call. Whatever you're imagining, it's bigger than that. How much bigger? A few $1,000s. 10,000. That would be life-changing. That would pay off his credit cards, cover rent for months. Let him breathe. But Anderson's face, when he'd said it, there'd been something almost like warning in his eyes. The next morning, Marcus dropped Zoe at school and took the subway back to the financial district. This time, Anderson met him in the lobby. "The other beneficiaries are already here," Anderson said as they rode the elevator. "I should prepare you, this is going to be contentious." "What does that mean?" "You'll see." The conference room was bigger this time. A long mahogany table dominated the center, surrounded by leather chairs. And sitting in two of those chairs were people who looked at Marcus like he was something they'd scraped off their shoe. The woman was 50s, Asian, impeccably dressed in a designer suit that probably cost more than Marcus's car. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, her makeup flawless, her expression cold. The man beside her was younger, late 20s, white expensive haircut suit tailored to show off a gym-built frame. He was scrolling through his phone with the kind of bored arrogance that made Marcus's fists clench. "Mrs. Margaret Chen," Anderson said, gesturing to the woman. "Mr. Justin Lancaster. This is Marcus Williams." Justin looked up from his phone, his eyes traveling over Marcus with open contempt. "This is the waiter." "Mr. Williams was a friend of your grandfather's," Anderson said evenly. "My grandfather didn't have friends," Justin said. "He had employees and people trying to get his money." "Justin," Margaret's voice was sharp. "Mr. Anderson, can we begin? I have a board meeting at noon." Anderson moved to the head of the table and opened a leather portfolio. Marcus sat at the far end, trying to make himself small while Margaret and Justin radiated hostility from across the table. "The last will and testament of Theodore William Lancaster." Anderson began, his voice formal. "I, Theodore Lancaster, being of sound mind and body." The legal language washed over Marcus. Charitable donations, millions to organizations Marcus had never heard of. Personal effects distributed to various museums. And then, "To my daughter Margaret Chen, I leave the contents of the Lancaster Family Trust totaling $5 million. Margaret's face went tight. $5 million. That's it. "Mom," Justin started. "The company is worth $9 billion, and he's leaving me $5 million, Anderson continued without acknowledging the outburst. "To my grandson Justin Lancaster, I leave an additional $5 million from the family trust." Justin's face flushed red. "Are you kidding me? $5 million after everything I—" "If you'll let me finish," Anderson said, his voice like ice. The room went silent. "The majority of Mr. Lancaster's personal assets have been liquidated over the past 2 years and distributed to various charitable foundations. The remaining assets are as follows." He turned a page. "To Dr. Howard Chen, my personal physician and friend, I leave $2 million in gratitude for his care." Margaret's hands clenched on the table. "And finally," Anderson said, his eyes moving to Marcus, "we come to the primary bequest." Marcus's heart hammered in his chest. "To Marcus Williams, the young man who served me coffee every morning at the Riverside Diner, who treated me with dignity when I was invisible to the rest of the world, who never asked for anything but gave me the gift of being seen as a human being rather than a source of money." Oh God. Marcus couldn't breathe. "To Marcus Williams, I leave the following. First, an immediate cash bequest of $500,000 to be transferred to his account within 72 hours. The room spun. $500,000. Marcus gripped the edge of the table. Justin shot to his feet. "This is insane." "Sit down, Mr. Lancaster," Anderson said, his voice sharp as a whip. "I'm not finished." Justin sat, his face purple with rage. "Second," Anderson continued, "I leave to Marcus Williams the full ownership of the property located at 428 East 14th Street, currently operating as the Riverside Diner, which I purchased through a subsidiary corporation 6 months ago." Marcus's vision blurred. Theodore had bought the diner when why? And third, I leave to Marcus Williams the investment portfolio I established in the name of the Riverside Diner, LLC, currently valued at approximately $6 million, to be used for the operation, renovation, and expansion of the diner as Mr. Williams sees fit. The silence in the room was deafening. $6 million. The diner. Marcus couldn't process it. Couldn't breathe. "This is fraud," Justin said, his voice shaking with rage. "That waiter manipulated a senile old man. Your grandfather was examined by 3 independent physicians in the month before his death." Anderson cut him off. All confirmed he was of completely sound mind, and Mr. Williams had no knowledge of any of this until this moment. "I don't care. Furthermore," Anderson's voice turned cold. Mr. Lancaster anticipated this reaction. He left a sealed letter for Mr. Williams. He slid an envelope across the table, along with video evidence of his decision-making process that he instructed me to release to the press if any beneficiary attempts to contest the will. Margaret leaned forward. "What kind of evidence?" "Video recordings of Mr. Lancaster explaining his reasoning. Dated, witnessed, legally airtight." Anderson's expression was granite. "I've been an attorney for 30 years, Mrs. Chen. Your father made absolutely certain this will could not be broken." Justin's chair screeched as he stood. "We'll sue. We'll drag this through court for years." "You can try," Anderson said calmly. "But you should know that Mr. Lancaster structured the estate specifically to survive legal challenge. And every day you spend fighting this in court, the legal fees come out of your $5 million inheritance." He paused. "Your grandfather was many things, Mr. Lancaster. Naive was not one of them." Marcus sat frozen, while Justin raged, and Margaret made cold, calculated threats. The envelope with his name sat in front of him, Theodore's handwriting on the front, shaky but clear. "For Marcus. Read this when you're alone." "This meeting is concluded," Anderson finally said. "Mrs. Chen, Mr. Lancaster, my assistant, will provide you with the documentation. Mr. Williams, if you'll stay behind, please." Margaret stood, her movements rigid with fury. She looked at Marcus for the first time, really looked at him, and her eyes were full of such venom it made his skin crawl. "You manipulated a lonely, grieving old man," she said quietly. "I don't know how you did it, but I will find out. And when I do, I will destroy you." She walked out, heels clicking on the marble floor like gunshots. Justin lingered, his face twisted with rage and something else. Humiliation, maybe. "You have no idea what you just inherited," he said. "It's not just money. It's enemies. People who wanted that company, that power. You just painted a target on your back." He leaned closer. "And on your daughters." The threat hung in the air like poison. Then he was gone, and Marcus was alone with Anderson in the silent conference room, his hands shaking so badly he had to clench them into fists to make it stop. "Mr. Williams, I can't do this." Marcus's voice cracked. "I'm a waiter. I don't know anything about running a business or managing money or—" Mr. Lancaster knew that. Anderson sat down beside him, his expression softening for the first time. "He didn't leave you this because he thought you were a businessman. He left it to you because he trusted your heart." He tapped the envelope. "Read the letter. It will help." Marcus picked up the envelope with trembling hands. The seal was wax, old-fashioned, stamped with an L. "What do I do now? Now?" Anderson stood. "Now you go home to your daughter. Tomorrow we'll start the process of transferring assets. I've arranged for a financial advisor to meet with you next week. And Mr. Williams." He paused at the door. "Theodore Lancaster was my friend for 40 years. He was brilliant, ruthless, and impossible to manipulate. If he chose you, he had good reason. Don't let Margaret or Justin make you doubt that." Then he was gone, and Marcus was alone in a conference room 42 stories above a city that suddenly felt very dangerous. He opened the envelope with shaking hands. Inside was a single page, Theodore's handwriting spidery but legible. "Dear Marcus, If you're reading this, I'm gone. I'm sorry I couldn't say goodbye in person. I'm sorry for the chaos I'm about to bring into your life. But I'm not sorry for what I've done. You showed me kindness when I had nothing to offer you. You treated me like a human being when I was invisible to everyone else. You let me spend time with your daughter and gave me back something I thought I'd lost forever, a reason to smile. The money isn't a reward. It's a tool. Use it to build the life you and Zoe deserve. Use it to make the Riverside Diner into the place I know it can be. Somewhere people are seen valued, treated with dignity. My daughter and grandson will hate you for this. I'm sorry for that too. But they had their chance to learn what matters. They chose money and power over humanity. You chose kindness when you had every reason to choose bitterness. There's more I need to tell you. More you need to understand about why I did this. My apartment on 5th Avenue, the key is with Philip Anderson. Go there. Look at my study. Understand who I was, what I built, and why I'm trusting you with it. You're going to be scared. That's good. Fear means you understand the weight of this. But don't let fear stop you from being the man I saw in that diner every morning, the good father, the kind soul, the person who deserves a chance. Take care of Zoe. Live well. Make me proud. Your friend Theodore Marcus read it twice, then folded it carefully and put it back in the envelope. His vision was blurry. His hands were shaking. $500,000. $6 million in investments. The diner. All of it. He pulled out his phone and looked at the time. 2:30. Zoe would be getting out of school in 45 minutes. Marcus stood on shaking legs and walked to the elevator. Rode it down 42 floors in silence. Stepped out into the Manhattan afternoon, where everything looked the same, but nothing would ever be the same again. His phone buzzed. Text from Raymond. You're fired. Clean out your locker by Friday. Marcus stared at the message for a long moment. Then he typed back, I quit. Keep the locker. He hit send and started walking toward the subway, toward his daughter's school, toward a future he couldn't begin to imagine. Behind him in an office 42 stories up, Philip Anderson watched from the window and pulled out his phone. It's done, he said when the call connected. Williams took the inheritance. And yes, Mrs. Chen made threats. We should prepare for legal action. He listened for a moment. No, he has no idea what he's walking into. But Theodore was right about one thing: the kid's got heart. Let's hope that's enough. He hung up and turned back to the window, watching Marcus disappear into the crowd below, and wondered if Theodore Lancaster's last gamble would save the young man's life or destroy it. Marcus stood outside Zoe's school at 3:15 with his hands in his pockets, trying to look normal. Trying to feel normal. Like he hadn't just inherited more money than he'd make in 10 lifetimes. Like the world hadn't just tilted sideways and dumped him into a future he couldn't comprehend. The school doors opened, and kids poured out like a flood, shouting, laughing, shoving each other, backpacks bouncing. Marcus scanned the crowd for his daughter's face, and found her near the back, walking slowly, with her friend Keisha, both of them giggling about something. When Zoe spotted him, her face lit up. Daddy? She ran to him, and he caught her, lifting her off the ground in a hug that lasted longer than usual. Daddy, you're squishing me again. Sorry. He set her down but kept hold of her hand. How was school? Good. We did art today, and I drew a dragon castle, and Mrs. Peterson said it was really good, and put it on the wall. She looked up at him, her dark eyes searching his face. Are you okay? You look weird. I'm fine, baby girl. Just tired. Did you work today? The lie came easily. Yeah. Busy morning. They walked home hand in hand, while Zoe chattered about her day, and Marcus tried to focus on her words instead of the numbers spinning through his head. $500,000. $6 million. The diner. Theodore's letter folded in his pocket, the weight of it heavier than paper had any right to be. When they got to their building, Mrs. Patterson was standing in the hallway outside Marcus's apartment, arms crossed, face set in hard lines. Mr. Williams, we need to talk. Marcus's stomach sank. Mrs. Patterson, I know I'm late on rent, but I can pay you. You're 3 months late. 3 months. I've been patient, but my patience has limits. She held out an envelope. This is your 30-day notice. You need to be out by December 1st. Wait, please. Marcus pulled out his wallet with shaking hands. He had $73. That was it. That was everything. I can give you this now, and I'll have the rest by when you've been saying that for 3 months. Mrs. Patterson's face softened slightly. Look, I like you. You're a good father. You keep the place clean. You don't cause trouble. But I got bills too. I can't keep carrying you. I understand. Just give me 2 weeks. Please. I'll have the money. Mrs. Patterson looked at him for a long moment, then at Zoe standing beside him, her small hand gripping his. 2 weeks, she said finally. But that's it. You don't pay by November 28th, you're out. She walked away, and Marcus unlocked the apartment with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. Inside, he closed the door and leaned against it, his eyes shut. Daddy? Zoe's voice was small. Are we going to have to move? He opened his eyes and looked down at her worried face. 7 years old and already learning that the world was hard and unstable and could collapse under your feet without warning. No, baby. We're going to be okay, I promise. But Mrs. Patterson said, I'll take care of it. He knelt down so they were eye level. You don't have to worry about grown-up stuff, okay? That's my job. Your job is to be 7 and draw dragons and tell me about school. Zoe studied his face with those 2 old eyes, then nodded. Okay, Daddy. That night, after Zoe was asleep in her bed, the only bedroom in their 1-bedroom apartment, while Marcus took the couch, he pulled out his phone and stared at it for 20 minutes before finally calling the number Anderson had given him. Mr. Williams. Anderson answered on the second ring. I was expecting your call. You said the money would be transferred in 72 hours. That's correct. $500,000 will be deposited into the account you provided tomorrow morning. Marcus swallowed hard. Can you make it faster? I need to pay my rent or I'm getting evicted. There was a pause. How much do you need? $4,000. For 3 months back, rent and next month. Another pause longer this time. Mr. Williams, in 72 hours you'll have $500,000. Can't your landlord wait? She gave me 2 weeks. He heard Anderson sigh. Give me her information. I'll have a cashier's check delivered tomorrow morning for the full amount. I can't ask you to. You're not asking. I'm offering. And it's not my money, it's yours. I'm simply expediting the process. Anderson's voice turned gentle. Mr. Williams, you need to understand something. Your financial situation just changed in ways you can't yet comprehend. $4,000 is no longer a crisis. It's barely a rounding error. Marcus sat down heavily on the couch. This doesn't feel real. It will. Tomorrow at 9 a.m., I need you to come to the office. We're meeting with a financial advisor who will help you set up proper accounts and explain how to manage the portfolio. Can you make it? I don't have a job anymore. I can make whenever you need. 9 a.m. then. And Mr. Williams, don't tell anyone about this yet. Not friends, not family, not your former co-workers. Wealth makes people behave in unpredictable ways. I don't have family, and I don't have friends, just Zoe. Then it should be easy to keep quiet. Anderson paused. Did you read Theodore's letter? Yes. He mentioned his apartment. I'll have a car pick you up on Friday morning at 10. You should see it. Understand what he was leaving behind. They hung up, and Marcus sat in the dark apartment, listening to the radiator clank, and the neighbors argue through the thin walls and tried to process the fact that all of this poverty and struggle and barely hanging on was over. Except it didn't feel over. It felt like standing on the edge of a cliff in the dark, unable to see how far down it went. The next morning, Marcus dropped Zoe at school and took the subway to Anderson's office. The financial advisor was a woman in her 40s named Rebecca Torres, sharp-eyed and no-nonsense, who spent 2 hours explaining things like trusts and tax implications and investment strategies in language Marcus barely understood. "The bottom line," she said finally, "is that you're now worth approximately $6.5 million. The $500,000 is immediate cash. The $6 million portfolio is structured to generate approximately $240,000 per year in passive income, assuming conservative investment strategies." Marcus's brain short-circuited on that number. $240,000 per year. He currently made $28,000. "What do I do?" he asked. "First, we set up proper banking, the kind of accounts that can handle this level of assets. Second, we talk about your goals. What do you want this money to do for you?" "I want Zoe to be okay. I want to not worry about rent or medicine or whether I can afford to take her to a doctor." Rebecca smiled. "Those are no longer concerns. What else?" "What else?" Marcus thought about the diner, about Theodore's letter, about the promise to make it a place where people were seen and valued. "The diner," he said slowly. "Theodore left me the diner. He said to make it better. I don't know what that means." "Then we'll figure it out. But first," Rebecca slid a folder across the table. "Sign these forms. We're setting up 3 accounts. A checking account for daily expenses with a starting balance of $50,000. A savings account with the remaining $450,000. And the investment portfolio stays in the existing trust structure." Marcus signed where she pointed, his hand shaking. Numbers that had seemed impossible yesterday were now just lines on paper, abstract and unreal. When he left the office 2 hours later, he had a new debit card in his wallet connected to an account with $50,000 in it. He stood on the sidewalk and pulled it out, staring at his name embossed on the plastic. His phone buzzed. "Text from Anderson, cashier's check for rent delivered to your landlord this morning. You're paid through March." Marcus sat down on a nearby bench and put his head in his hands. His chest felt tight, his breathing shallow. This was real. This was actually happening. A woman walking by stopped. "You okay, honey?" "Yeah." Marcus looked up and forced a smile. "Yeah, I'm fine. Just got some good news." "Well, congratulations." She smiled and kept walking. Marcus stayed on that bench for 20 minutes, watching people rush past on their way to jobs and appointments and lives, and thought about how yesterday he'd been one of them. Today he was something else, something he didn't have a name for yet. His phone rang. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer, then thought about Margaret Chen's threat and Justin's warning, and picked up. "Mr. Williams." A man's voice, young, nervous. "My name is David Kim. I'm a reporter with the New York Times. I was hoping to ask you a few questions about Theodore Lancaster's will." Marcus's blood went cold. "How did you get this number?" "Public records. Mr. Williams, my sources tell me you inherited a substantial portion of Mr. Lancaster's estate. Can you comment on your relationship with him?" "No, no comment." Marcus hung up, his hands shaking. The phone rang again immediately. Different number. He sent it to voicemail. A text came through. "Mr. Williams, this is Jennifer Park from the Post. I'd love to talk to you about Theodore Lancaster." Then another call. Another text. Within 5 minutes, his phone was blowing up with reporters all asking the same questions, all wanting the story of the waiter who'd inherited millions. Marcus turned off his phone and sat there trying not to panic. Anderson had said, "Don't tell anyone," but apparently someone had told everyone. He took the subway home in a daze, his phone still off, jumping at every stranger who looked at him too long. When he got to his building, there was a man in an expensive suit standing outside with a camera crew. "Mr. Williams, Mike Chen, Channel 7 News." Marcus ducked his head and pushed past them into the building, ignoring the shouted questions. Inside, his hands were shaking so badly he could barely get his key in the lock. His phone buzzed the second he turned it back on. 37 missed calls, 52 texts, and one voicemail from Anderson. Mr. Williams, the press got wind of the will. Don't talk to anyone. I'm handling it. Marcus called him back immediately. Where are you? Anderson asked. Home. There are reporters outside my building. I know. I'm sending a car. Pack a bag for you and your daughter. Enough for a few days. What? Why? Because Margaret Chen called a press conference an hour ago claiming you manipulated her father. It's all over the news. Your address is public record, and there are going to be more reporters, possibly protesters. We need to move you somewhere safe until this dies down. I have to pick up Zoe from school in an hour. I'll have someone pick her up, a woman named Sarah Chen, Dr. Chen's daughter. She's a pediatric nurse, fully vetted, completely trustworthy. She'll bring Zoe to you. I'm not letting a stranger pick up my daughter. Mr. Williams. Anderson's voice turned sharp. Right now, there are reporters camped outside your building and your daughter's school. In about 2 hours, when the evening news runs Margaret's press conference, there will be more. Do you want Zoe walking through that, cameras in her face? Questions about her father, the con artist. Marcus's stomach turned. No. Then pack a bag. The car will be there in 20 minutes. I'll text you the hotel address. I can't afford a hotel. You can afford the Four Seasons. Pack, now. Anderson hung up, and Marcus stood in his apartment, breathing too fast, trying not to spiral into panic. This was supposed to make things better. Theodore's gift was supposed to solve problems, not create new ones. He packed quickly clothes for him and Zoe, her favorite stuffed dragon, her inhaler, the framed photo of the three of them from before Shanice left. Everything that mattered fit in one small duffel bag. The reality of that hit him hard. His phone rang. Anderson again. Car's downstairs. Black SUV driver's name is Marcus, ironically. Sarah just picked up Zoe from school. She told her you had a work emergency, and she's taking her for ice cream. Zoe's fine. How do you know she's fine? Because Sarah just sent me a photo. A text came through. Picture of Zoe sitting in a booth at an ice cream shop, grinning around a spoon of chocolate, completely oblivious to the chaos erupting around her father. Okay, Marcus breathed. Okay. The hotel is the Four Seasons on 57th. Suites under my name. Stay there until I call you. Don't open the door for anyone except Sarah. Don't answer calls from numbers you don't recognize. And Mr. Williams, this will pass. I promise. Marcus grabbed the duffel bag and left the apartment, locking it behind him. In the hallway, Mrs. Patterson was standing by her door. Marcus, what's going on? There are reporters outside asking about you. It's complicated. I'm sorry. I'll explain later. Are you in trouble? No, I don't think so. I hope not. He paused. The rent check that came this morning, it was real. I promise. Her eyes widened. That was $15,000. I know. I'm paid through March, right? Right, but Marcus, what happened? Something good, I think. I'm not sure yet. He headed for the stairs. I have to go. The SUV was idling at the curb, tinted windows hiding whoever was inside. A man in a black suit, tall professional, the kind who'd clearly done security work, opened the back door. Mr. Williams, I'm Marcus. Please get in. The reporters surged forward immediately, cameras flashing, voices shouting questions. Mr. Williams, did you know Theodore Lancaster was a billionaire? How long were you planning this? What do you say to accusations of elder abuse? Marcus ducked into the SUV, and the driver shut the door, muffling the noise. The tinted windows turned the reporters into shadowy shapes, pressing against the glass. Jesus, Marcus muttered. First time dealing with press? The driver asked as he pulled smoothly into traffic. First time dealing with any of this. It gets easier, or you get numb to it. One of the two. The Four Seasons was everything Marcus had never been. Polished marble soft lighting staff who moved with quiet efficiency and treated him like he belonged there, even though he was wearing jeans and a jacket from Target. The driver escorted him to the 20th floor to a suite with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Central Park. "Mr. Anderson covered everything," the driver said. "Room service minibar, anything you need. Sarah will bring your daughter up in about 30 minutes. I'll be in the lobby if you need anything." Then he was gone, and Marcus was alone in a hotel room that was bigger than his apartment, staring out at a view of the city that looked nothing like the city he knew. His phone buzzed. Text from Anderson. "Turn on the news." Marcus found the remote and turned on the TV. Channel 7. The evening news. And there was Margaret Chen standing outside Peterson and Associates with microphones shoved in her face, looking dignified and devastated. "My father was a brilliant man who built an empire from nothing," she said, her voice shaking with controlled emotion. "In his final years, he became increasingly isolated and vulnerable, and someone took advantage of that vulnerability." "Are you referring to Marcus Williams?" a reporter asked. "I'm referring to anyone who would manipulate a lonely, grieving old man for financial gain." Margaret's eyes were hard. "My father cut off contact with his family years ago. We tried to reach him, tried to help him, but he refused. And then suddenly a stranger appears in his life and convinces him to sign over his fortune. That's not coincidence. That's calculated manipulation." "What evidence do you have?" "I have a father who was worth $9 billion and left his only daughter $5 million while giving the rest to a waiter he knew for 2 months. That's all the evidence I need." The reporter turned to the camera. Marcus Williams could not be reached for comment, but sources close to the situation say he was as surprised as anyone by the contents of Theodore Lancaster's will. "Back to you in the studio." Marcus turned off the TV and sat on the edge of the bed, his hands shaking. Manipulated. Con artist. Elder abuse. The words echoed in his head like accusations. There was a knock on the door. Marcus looked through the peephole and saw a young Asian woman in her 30s, Zoe, standing beside her, holding a stuffed dragon. He opened the door and Zoe ran to him. "Daddy, this hotel is so fancy. Sarah said we're staying here tonight. Is it because of your work emergency?" Marcus picked her up, holding her tight. "Yeah, baby, something like that." "Thank you for bringing her," he said to Sarah over Zoe's shoulder. Sarah smiled. "No problem, she's a sweetheart. Talked my ear off about dragons the whole drive." She handed him a business card. "My number's on there. Mr. Anderson said to tell you I'm available if you need childcare while all this is getting sorted out." "All what?" "The media circus. It'll die down in a few days once they realize you're not going to give them a story." She paused. "For what it's worth, my uncle Dr. Chen, he was Theodore's friend. He said Theodore knew exactly what he was doing. Said he'd never seen the old man happier than after he met you." She left, and Marcus sat on the couch with Zoe curled against his side, her dragon clutched in her arms. "Daddy, is this about Mr. Theodore?" Marcus's breath caught. "What makes you say that?" "Sarah told me he died. She said that's why you've been sad." Zoe looked up at him with those dark, too knowing eyes. "Are you sad because he was your friend?" "Yeah, baby, I am." "Me too. He was nice. He helped me color dragons." She was quiet for a moment. "Will we see him again?" "No, sweetheart. When people die, they don't come back." "Like Mommy." "Mommy's not dead, baby. She just lives far away." "But she's not coming back either, right?" The question hit like a fist to the gut. "I don't know." Zoe nodded like she'd expected that answer. "It's okay, Daddy. We don't need her. We have each other." Marcus pulled her closer, his eyes burning. "Yeah, baby girl. We have each other." That night, while Zoe slept in the suite's massive bed, Marcus stood at the window looking out at the city lights and tried to understand what Theodore had done. Not just the money that was overwhelming, but simple enough. Theodore had given him financial security, had lifted the crushing weight of poverty that had been suffocating Marcus for 3 years. But he'd also given him something more complicated, a target, a story, a public identity as the waiter who'd conned a billionaire. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. You don't deserve that money. You manipulated a sick old man and you're going to pay for it. Then another con artist piece of trash. Hope you rot in hell. And another, people like you make me sick. Marcus turned off his phone and closed the curtains, shutting out the city and its judgment. Tomorrow he'd have to deal with lawyers and reporters and Margaret Chen's accusations. Tomorrow he'd have to figure out how to protect Zoe from the storm building around them. But tonight, he crawled into bed next to his daughter, pulled her close and held on tight while the world outside spun into chaos. He couldn't control. In his pocket, Theodore's letter crinkled. "You're going to be scared," the old man had written. That's good. Fear means you understand the weight of this. Marcus understood the weight. He just wasn't sure he was strong enough to carry it. Marcus woke at 6 a.m. from pure habit, his body conditioned by years of early shifts. For 3 seconds he didn't remember where he was. Then it all came rushing back: the hotel suite, the reporter's Margaret Chen's face on television calling him a manipulator. Zoe was still asleep, curled around her stuffed dragon, her breathing soft and even. Marcus watched her for a moment, then carefully slid out of bed and moved to the window. Dawn was breaking over Central Park, the city turning gold and pink in the early light. Beautiful. Foreign. Like looking at someone else's life. His phone had 17 new voicemails and 43 texts, most from numbers he didn't recognize. He deleted them without reading and called Anderson. "You're up early," Anderson said by way of greeting. "Couldn't sleep. What happens now?" "Now we go see Theodore's apartment. The car will pick you up at 9:30. Bring Zoe. Sarah will meet you there to watch her while we talk." "I don't want to leave her with strangers." "Mr. Williams, I understand your concern, but you need to see what Theodore left in that apartment. And your daughter doesn't need to see it. Trust me on this." They hung up, and Marcus ordered room service for breakfast, something he'd never done in his life, and when it arrived on a cart with actual silver domes covering the plates, Zoe's eyes went wide. "Daddy, are we rich now?" The question caught him off guard. "What makes you ask that? We're in a fancy hotel. You ordered fancy breakfast. And you're not worried." She tilted her head, studying him. "You're always worried. But you look different now." 7 years old, and she could read him like a book. Marcus sat down across from her and tried to figure out how to explain something he barely understood himself. "Mr. Theodore left us some money, baby girl. Enough that we don't have to worry for a while." "How much is some... a lot?" "Like $100, more than that." Zoe's eyes widened. $1,000? More. $1 million. She said it like it was a made-up number, something from a fairy tale. Something like that. Zoe was quiet for a moment, chewing her pancake thoughtfully. "Is that why those people were yelling at you yesterday? Because Mr. Theodore gave us money?" "Yeah, baby. Some people think I tricked him, that I was only nice to him because I wanted his money. But that's not true. You were nice to him before you knew he had money." "I know that. And you know that. But sometimes people believe what they want to believe." Marcus reached across the table and took her hand. "This is going to be weird for a while." "Okay. People might say mean things about me, about us, but I need you to remember something: we didn't do anything wrong. Mr. Theodore was our friend, and friends help each other. That's all this is." Zoe nodded solemnly. "Okay, Daddy." At 9:30, they met the driver in the lobby. Sarah was already in the SUV, smiling when Zoe climbed in beside her. "Morning. I brought coloring books. Thought we could work on dragons while your dad has his meeting." The drive to Theodore's building took 15 minutes through morning traffic. Marcus watched the city roll past coffee shops, opening, people rushing to work. Everything normal and mundane, while his stomach churned with anxiety about what he was about to see. Theodore's building was old money incarnate, pre-war limestone, a doorman who looked like he'd been there since the building went up, the kind of place where you needed references just to rent. The elevator operator was an older black man in a crisp uniform who smiled at Zoe. "Good morning, young lady. Which floor?" "Penthouse," Anderson said. He'd been waiting in the lobby and joined them for the ride up. The elevator was slow, creaking upward with mechanical groans. Zoe pressed close to Marcus's side, her hand tight in his. "It's okay, baby," he murmured. "We're just visiting where Mr. Theodore lived." The elevator opened directly into the apartment. No hallway, no neighbors. The entire top floor was Theodore's. Marcus stepped out and stopped breathing. The space was enormous, all tall windows and polished floors and art on every wall. Real art. Museum art. Marcus didn't know much about paintings, but he knew money when he saw it, and every piece in this room was worth more than he used to make in a year. Holy... He caught himself before cursing in front of Zoe. This is where he lived. "For the last 20 years, Anderson said quietly. "After his wife died, he moved here, stopped going to the office, cut off contact with almost everyone." Sarah knelt down to Zoe's level. "Hey, sweetheart, why don't you and I go explore? I bet there's a really cool room somewhere with a view of the park." Zoe looked at Marcus for permission. He nodded, and she went with Sarah, their voices fading as they moved deeper into the apartment. Anderson turned to Marcus. "The study is this way." They walked down a hallway lined with more paintings, landscapes, portraits, abstract pieces that probably had names Marcus wouldn't recognize. At the end of the hall, Anderson opened a heavy wooden door. "This is what Theodore wanted you to see." The study was different from the rest of the apartment. Where everything else was cold and perfect, this room was lived in. Books crammed every shelf floor to ceiling. A worn leather chair sat by the window. The desk was covered in papers and folders and photographs. But what dominated the room was the wall behind the desk, a massive corkboard covered in what looked like a detective's investigation. Photographs, newspaper clippings, financial documents, handwritten notes, all connected with colored string like something from a crime show. Marcus moved closer, his heart hammering. At the center of the web was a photograph of a woman, Asian beautiful, laughing at the camera. She was standing in front of a small restaurant, the sign above her reading, "Maggie's Table." "That's Margaret," Anderson said quietly. "Theodore's wife. Before she became Margaret Lancaster, she was Maggie Chen. She owned 3 small restaurants in Queens. Places where everybody knew your name, where the food was honest and the prices were fair." Marcus looked at the other photos connected to that central image. Maggie, with a young girl, Margaret probably. Maggie with Theodore, both of them younger, happier. Maggie, in a hospital bed, thin and frail, Theodore holding her hand. "She died of cancer 15 years ago." Anderson continued. "Theodore was never the same after. But before that, he promised her something. Promised he'd protect what she'd built. The restaurants? She'd sold them by then. Had to pay for medical bills. A man named Harrison Vance bought them, promised to keep them running as community spaces. 6 months after Maggie died, Vance turned them into high-end gastropubs. Tripled the prices. Pushed out all the old customers." Anderson's voice hardened. Theodore spent the next 10 years systematically destroying Vance's business empire. Bought up his debt, forced him into bankruptcy, made sure he never worked in the industry again. Marcus stared at the section of the board devoted to Vance financial records, legal documents, newspaper articles chronicling his downfall. Jesus. Theodore was ruthless when he wanted to be. But it wasn't about revenge. It was about keeping a promise to his wife. Anderson moved to another section of the board. This is his son Michael, and Michael's son Justin. The photos showed a young man who looked like Theodore, same sharp features, same intelligent eyes. And beside him, a boy who'd grow up to be the angry man Marcus had met in the conference room. Car accident 12 years ago. Michael was driving Justin home from a baseball game. Drunk driver ran a red light. Michael died on impact. Justin survived with minor injuries. He was 15. Marcus's chest tightened. That's horrible. Theodore blamed himself. Thought if he'd been a better father, Michael wouldn't have been driving that night, would have had a driver, security, all the things money could buy. He tried to connect with Justin after tried to be the grandfather he'd failed to be as a father. But Justin was angry. Blamed Theodore for not being there, for caring more about business than family. And maybe he wasn't wrong. Anderson pointed to a section of the board covered in financial statements and legal documents. Theodore gave Justin everything. Paid for college, set him up with a trust fund, gave him a position at Lancaster Global. And Justin burned through it all. Bad investments, gambling, trying to prove he was as smart as his grandfather. Theodore kept bailing him out, kept hoping Justin would learn. But he never did. So he cut him off. Not completely. But he restructured his estate, made sure Justin couldn't destroy what Theodore had built. And then he started looking for something else. Someone else. Anderson moved to the final section of the board, and Marcus's breath caught. There were photos of him, dozens of them. Marcus serving coffee at the diner. Marcus walking Zoe to school. Marcus sitting on a bench in the park, his daughter beside him. Candid shots taken from a distance, a surveillance operation that must have lasted weeks. He was watching me. Testing you, Anderson corrected. Theodore didn't trust easily, not after everything that happened, but he saw something in you. Saw the way you treated people, the way you raised your daughter alone, the way you kept showing up even when life kept knocking you down. Marcus moved closer to the board. There was a note in Theodore's shaky handwriting. Day 23. Subject still doesn't know who I am. Still treats me with same kindness. No ulterior motive detected. Another note. Day 45. Met subject's daughter. Reminded me of Michael at that age. Pure. Honest. Subject is raising her right despite overwhelming obstacles. And finally, the last note dated 2 weeks before Theodore died. Decision made. M. Williams is exactly what Maggie would have wanted. Someone who understands that dignity matters more than profit. Someone who sees people, not opportunities. He'll fight me on this. He'll think he doesn't deserve it. That's how I know he's the right choice. Marcus's eyes were burning. He turned away from the board, his throat too tight to speak. He didn't leave you the money because he felt sorry for you, Anderson said quietly. He left it to you because you reminded him of what matters, of what Maggie believed, that a good meal and a kind word can change someone's day. That places like the Riverside Diner aren't just businesses, they're community. They're where people go to be seen. But I don't know how to run a business. I don't know anything about investments or corporate structure or... You don't need to. That's what people like me are for. What Rebecca Torres is for. Theodore didn't leave you his company. He liquidated most of that and gave it to charity. He left you something much more important, the chance to build something that matters, to create what Maggie would have wanted. Marcus sank into the leather chair, his head in his hands. Margaret thinks I manipulated him. Justin thinks I'm a con artist. Half the city thinks I'm a gold digger who took advantage of a lonely old man. They're wrong. How do I prove that? You don't. You live it. Anderson pulled a folder from Theodore's desk and handed it to Marcus. Theodore knew this would be hard. He knew his family would fight you. So he left you ammunition. Marcus opened the folder. Inside were legal documents, financial records, and a USB drive. What's this? Evidence. Theodore documented everything. His decision-making process, his mental competency evaluations, video recordings of him explaining why he chose you. If Margaret or Justin try to contest the will, we release this to the court. It's airtight, Marcus. They can't win. Then why are they still fighting? Because they're angry. Because they feel entitled to money they never earned. Because accepting that their father chose a stranger over them means accepting that they failed him in some fundamental way. Anderson's voice softened. That's a hard truth to swallow. Marcus looked at the board again, at all those photos of himself and Zoe, at Theodore's careful notes documenting his character, like a scientist studying a specimen. It should have felt invasive. Instead, it felt sad. An old man so damaged by loss and betrayal that he couldn't trust a simple act of kindness without weeks of verification. "Can I ask you something?" Of course. Did he have anyone? At the end? Anyone who actually cared about him, not his money. Anderson was quiet for a moment. He had Dr. Chen, his physician. They played chess every Tuesday. And he had me. We had lunch once a month. He never talked about personal things, but I like to think he knew I cared. He paused. And then he had you. Those last 2 months after he met you and Zoe, he was different, lighter. He'd call me just to tell me about something Zoe said, or how you'd remembered he liked his coffee a certain way. Small things. But they mattered to him. I wish I'd known. I wish I could have. Marcus's voice broke. I would have tried harder. Been there more. Something. You gave him exactly what he needed. You saw him as a person, not a bank account. In his world, that was rarer than you can imagine. They stood in silence for a moment, surrounded by the evidence of a lonely man's last desperate attempt to leave something good behind. Marcus's phone buzzed. Text from Sarah. Zoe found the telescope on the balcony. "We're looking at birds. She's having a blast. I should get back to her. There's one more thing." Anderson pulled a key from his pocket. "This apartment is yours now, part of the estate. You can sell it, rent it, live in it, whatever you want. But Theodore wanted you to have it." Marcus looked around at the priceless art, the soaring ceilings, the view of Central Park that probably cost more per month in maintenance than Marcus used to make in a year. "I can't live here." "You can. You just don't want to. I understand. But don't decide today. Sit with it. Think about what Theodore wanted for you to build something that matters. Sometimes that takes resources, space, a foundation to work from." They found Zoe and Sarah on the balcony, Zoe peering through an antique brass telescope at the park below. "Daddy, look, I can see the whole park. There's people playing baseball and dogs running and everything." Marcus lifted her up so she could see better, her excited chatter washing over him like a balm. This was real. This moment, his daughter's joy, the weight of her in his arms, this was what mattered. The rest was just details. They left the apartment an hour later, Zoe chattering the whole elevator ride down about the telescope and the paintings and the big fancy kitchen with 2 ovens. Sarah said goodbye in the lobby, giving Zoe a hug and promising to see her again soon. In the SUV heading back to the hotel, Marcus stared out the window and tried to process everything he'd learned. Theodore hadn't just left him money. He'd left him a mission, a purpose. A chance to build what Maggie had believed in places where people mattered more than profit. His phone rang. "Anderson. Turn on the news." Marcus's stomach dropped. "What happened?" "Just turn it on." The driver turned on the screen in the back of the SUV. It was tuned to a financial news channel, and the headline made Marcus's blood run cold. "Lancaster heir claims waiter poisoned billionaire." Justin Lancaster's face filled the screen, his expression a careful mix of grief and righteous anger. "My grandfather was healthy, active, and then this man." He pointed at a photo of Marcus that appeared beside him. "Shows up in his life, and 2 months later, he's dead. I'm calling for a full investigation, toxicology reports, everything." The news anchor leaned forward. "Are you suggesting Marcus Williams murdered your grandfather?" "I'm suggesting it's suspicious, very suspicious, and I'm not going to rest until I have answers." The screen cut back to the studio. Marcus Williams's attorney declined to comment, but sources say the will is ironclad and these accusations are baseless. Still, the Manhattan District Attorney's Office has confirmed they're reviewing the case. More on this developing story as it unfolds. Marcus couldn't breathe, couldn't think. Poison, murder, investigation. "Daddy?" Zoe's voice was small. "What's happening?" He turned off the screen and pulled her close. "Nothing, baby. Just grown-up stuff. Don't worry about it." But his hands were shaking. His vision was blurring. This wasn't just a legal fight anymore. This was criminal. This was Justin trying to put him in prison. His phone rang again. Anderson, his voice tight and controlled. "Don't panic. Don't panic. He's accusing me of murder. It's a desperate move. He has no evidence because there is no evidence. Theodore died of natural causes. The autopsy confirmed it. Justin is grasping at straws." "Then why is the DA investigating?" "Because they have to. Because a billionaire died and there are accusations and they can't ignore that." "But Marcus, listen to me, you did nothing wrong. The investigation will clear you. This is noise. That's all. Noise that could destroy my life. Noise that could take Zoe away from me if they decide I'm a murderer. That's not going to happen. I promise you that's not going to happen." But Anderson's promises felt hollow against the weight of Justin's accusation, against the image of Marcus's face on the news with the word murder floating above it. The SUV pulled up to the Four Seasons, and Marcus climbed out with Zoe, his legs shaking. In the lobby, people stared, whispered. Someone pulled out their phone to take a picture. Marcus ducked his head and hurried to the elevator, Zoe's hand tight in his, and rode up to the 20th floor in silence. Inside the suite, he locked the door and leaned against it, his heart racing. Zoe was watching him with worried eyes. "Daddy, you're scaring me." "I'm sorry, baby." He knelt down and took her hands. "I'm okay. Everything's going to be okay. Promise." He wanted to promise. Wanted to tell her that the world was fair, and truth mattered, and good people didn't get destroyed by lies. But he'd learned too much about life to believe in fairy tales. "I promise I'll do everything I can to keep us safe," he said instead. "That's the best I can do." Zoe threw her arms around his neck and held on tight, and Marcus closed his eyes and tried to believe his own words. That night, after Zoe was asleep, Marcus stood at the window looking out at the city and felt the full weight of what Theodore had given him. Not just money, not just opportunity, but enemies. Accusations. A target on his back that he'd never asked for and didn't know how to remove. His phone buzzed. Text from an unknown number. "You murdered him and everyone knows it. You're going to prison." Another text, different number. "Hope your daughter has someone to take care of her when they arrest you." And another killer. Marcus turned off his phone and closed his eyes, his hands gripping the windowsill until his knuckles went white. Theodore had seen something in him. Had believed Marcus could handle this. Could build something good from the ashes of one lonely old man's fortune. But standing there in a hotel suite that cost more per night than Marcus used to make in a week with his daughter asleep in the next room, and the city calling him a murderer, Marcus wasn't sure Theodore had been right. He wasn't sure he was strong enough for this. But he was going to have to be. Because Zoe was counting on him. Because Theodore had trusted him. Because walking away now would prove Justin and Margaret right, that Marcus was just a poor man who'd gotten lucky and couldn't handle the weight of real wealth. So Marcus stood at that window and made himself a promise. He would survive this. He would protect Zoe. He would build what Theodore had asked him to build. And he would prove to everyone, including himself, that kindness wasn't weakness, and that sometimes the person who deserves something most is the one who never expected to get it. The war was just beginning. But Marcus Williams had spent 3 years fighting poverty and exhaustion and a world that didn't care if he sank or swam. He knew how to fight. And this time, he had something worth fighting for. The call from the district attorney's office came 3 days later, while Marcus was eating breakfast with Zoe in the hotel suite. He'd been screening calls obsessively, ignoring reporters and blocked numbers, but this one showed up as NYC Criminal Justice, and his stomach dropped before he even answered. "Mr. Williams, this is Assistant District Attorney Karen Reeves. I need you to come to my office this afternoon at 2 p.m. to answer some questions regarding the death of Theodore Lancaster." Marcus's throat went dry. Am I being charged with something? Not at this time, but we're conducting an investigation and we need your cooperation. You're welcome to bring an attorney. I don't have an attorney. Then I'd suggest you get one. 2 p.m., Mr. Williams. Don't be late. She hung up, and Marcus sat staring at his phone, his breakfast turning to ash in his mouth. Daddy? Zoe looked up from her cereal. Who was that? Work stuff, baby. Don't worry about it. But his hands were shaking as he called Anderson. They want me to come in for questioning. I know. Reeves called me first as a courtesy. I've already arranged for a criminal defense attorney to meet you there. His name is David Park. He's one of the best in the city, and he'll make sure you don't say anything that could be used against you. I didn't do anything wrong. I know that. But innocent people go to prison every day because they talk without a lawyer present. Trust me on this, Marcus. Don't say a word without David in the room. Marcus spent the next 4 hours in a state of barely controlled panic. Sarah came to watch Zoe bringing more coloring books and a bright smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. She knew what was happening. Everyone knew. At 1:30, Marcus met David Park in the lobby of the DA's office. Park was 40-something Korean American with sharp eyes and an expensive suit that screamed competence. Mr. Williams. They shook hands. First rule, you don't answer anything without me nodding approval. They're going to try to make you comfortable, get you talking. Don't fall for it. Yes or no answers only, and if I touch your arm, you stop talking immediately. Understood? Understood. Good, let's go. The interview room was exactly like the ones on TV, gray walls, metal table, 2 chairs on each side. 8A Reeves was waiting with a detective named Morrison, a heavy-set white man with tired eyes and a wedding ring worn thin from years of wear. Mr. Williams, thank you for coming in. Reeves gestured to a chair. Please sit. Can we get you water, coffee? He's fine, Park said smoothly, sitting beside Marcus. Let's skip the pleasantries and get to why we're here. Reeves's smile didn't waver, but her eyes hardened slightly. Of course. Mr. Williams, how long did you know Theodore Lancaster? Marcus looked at Park, who nodded. About 8 weeks. And in those 8 weeks, how often did you see him? Every day. He came to the diner every morning. The Riverside Diner where you worked as a waiter? Yes. And during these daily interactions, did Mr. Lancaster ever discuss his health with you? No. Did he seem ill, weak, confused? No, he seemed fine. Reeves made a note. Did you know he was wealthy? Not until after he died. You expect us to believe that you served a billionaire every day for 2 months and had no idea who he was. Park's hand moved to Marcus's arm. My client has answered your question. Move on. Reeves leaned back. Mr. Williams, isn't it true that you had significant financial problems? Credit card debt overdue, rent, medical bills for your daughter? Yes. And isn't it convenient that a wealthy man befriended you right when you needed money most? I didn't know he was wealthy. So you say. But you're a smart man, Mr. Williams. Theodore Lancaster was a public figure. His photo has been in the paper's business magazines. You're telling me you never recognized him? Marcus felt sweat gathering at his collar. I don't read business magazines. I didn't know who he was. Did you put anything in his food? His coffee? The question hit like a slap. Park's hand clamped on Marcus's arm. Don't answer that, Park said sharply. Ms. Reeves, unless you have actual evidence of wrongdoing, these fishing expeditions end now. My client came here voluntarily to cooperate with your investigation. If you're going to accuse him of murder, charge him. Otherwise, we're done. Reeves and Morrison exchanged a look. Morrison spoke for the first time, his voice surprisingly gentle. Mr. Williams, we're not trying to railroad you, but you have to admit from our perspective, it looks suspicious. A man worth $9 billion leaves most of his fortune to someone he barely knew and dies 2 months later. We have to investigate. I understand that, Marcus said quietly. But I didn't hurt him. I cared about him. He was lonely, and I tried to be kind. That's all. Did he ever ask you for anything? Money favors anything unusual. No. Did you ever ask him for anything? No. Not even after you found out he was wealthy. I found out he was wealthy after he died. I never asked him for anything. Morrison leaned forward. Then why do you think he left you his fortune? Marcus met his eyes. You'd have to ask him. But I think he was tired of people only seeing his money. I saw him. Just him. And maybe that mattered. There was a long silence. Reeves tapped her pen against her notepad, her expression unreadable. We'll need you to submit to a polygraph, she said finally. Absolutely not, Park cut in. Polygraphs aren't admissible in court and you know it. You want to clear my client, look at the autopsy report, talk to his doctors, check the security footage from the diner. But you're not putting him through a fishing expedition based on nothing but the bitter accusations of family members who got less money than they wanted. Reeves's jaw tightened. We're done for now. But Mr. Williams, don't leave the city. We may have more questions. Outside, Marcus leaned against the building and tried to catch his breath. Park stood beside him, checking his phone. That went better than I expected. Better they think I'm a murderer. They're investigating. That's different. And between you and me, they've got nothing. Theodore's autopsy showed heart failure, natural causes. His medical records show a history of heart disease. There's no toxicology red flags, no evidence of foul play. Justin Lancaster is making noise because he's angry, but noise isn't evidence. Then why do I feel like I'm going to be sick? Park's expression softened. Because having the government question whether you killed someone is terrifying, even when you're innocent. But Marcus, listen to me, you're going to be okay. This investigation will clear you. It might take weeks or months, but it will clear you. Marcus wanted to believe him, but trust didn't come easy when the world kept proving itself hostile. That night back at the hotel, Marcus couldn't sleep. He kept replaying the interrogation in his head, analyzing every question, every look, wondering what they really thought. Around midnight, he gave up and moved to the couch, pulling out his laptop to do something he'd been avoiding: reading what people were saying about him online. It was a mistake. The articles were bad enough, tabloid headlines screaming about gold diggers and murder plots. But the comments were worse. Hundreds of people who'd never met Marcus, never knew Theodore, absolutely certain that Marcus was a con artist, a manipulator, a killer. He obviously poisoned the old man. Why else would a billionaire leave everything to a stranger? Single father, my ass. Probably neglects that poor kid while he's out scamming rich people. Hope he rots in prison. People like this make me sick. There were some defenders scattered through the vitriol, people who thought the story was romantic, a modern fairy tale about kindness rewarded. But their voices were drowned out by the chorus of hatred. Marcus closed the laptop and put his head in his hands. This was his life now. This was what Theodore's gift had bought him: not freedom, but a different kind of prison. One made of public opinion and media scrutiny, and the constant weight of other people's judgment. His phone buzzed. Text from Anderson. Stop reading the comments. I know you are. Stop. Marcus almost smiled despite everything. Anderson knew him too well. Another text: press conference tomorrow, 10 a.m. My office. We're releasing Theodore's video testimony. Time to fight back. Marcus typed back, what video? The one where Theodore explains exactly why he chose you. Be there. The next morning, Marcus stood in Anderson's office, surrounded by lawyers and PR consultants, all of them moving with efficient purpose, while he felt completely out of his depth. The press conference was set up in the building's main conference room: cameras, microphones, a podium with the Peterson and Associates logo. You don't have to say anything, Anderson told him. I'll handle the statement, but I want you there. I want them to see you, see that you're not hiding. What if they ask questions? Then Park will shut them down. We're controlling the narrative today. Not Justin, not Margaret, us. At exactly 10 a.m., Anderson stepped to the podium. The room was packed with reporters' cameras flashing the energy electric with anticipation. Good morning. I'm Philip Anderson, senior partner at Peterson & Associates and executor of Theodore Lancaster's estate. I'm here today to address the baseless accusations that have been made against my client, Marcus Williams. He pressed a button and a screen lowered behind him. Theodore's face appeared, the video clearly shot in his apartment study. His pale blue eyes looking directly at the camera. The room went silent. My name is Theodore William Lancaster. Theodore's recorded voice said strong, despite the tremor in his hands. I'm recording this on October 3rd, 3 weeks before my death, while in sound mind and body, as certified by 3 independent physicians whose reports are attached to this recording. He paused, gathering his thoughts. I'm 79 years old. I've built an empire worth $9 billion. I've won. I've lost. I've loved and buried a wife who was better than I deserved. I've watched my son die and failed my grandson. And in my final years, I've learned that money without meaning is just numbers on a screen. Theodore's eyes were wet, but his voice stayed steady. 8 weeks ago, I met a man named Marcus Williams. He didn't know who I was, didn't care about my money because he didn't know I had any. He just saw a lonely old man sitting in a corner and decided that lonely old man deserved kindness. The camera shook slightly. Theodore took a breath. Every morning Marcus cut my toast because he noticed my hands shake. He poured my coffee and asked about my day like it mattered. When I met his daughter, he let me spend time with her even though he had no reason to trust me. He gave me something I thought I'd lost forever, a reason to wake up in the morning. A reason to smile. Someone in the press conference room was crying. Marcus could hear it. I'm leaving Marcus Williams the majority of my personal fortune, not because he asked for it, he never did. Not because he manipulated me. I'm a ruthless bastard, and I've eaten smarter people than Marcus for breakfast. I'm leaving it to him because he reminded me what my wife Maggie believed, that kindness matters. That dignity matters. That treating people like human beings instead of transactions is worth more than all the money in the world. Theodore leaned closer to the camera. My daughter will contest this will. My grandson will call Marcus a con artist. They'll say I was senile, manipulated, not in my right mind. They're wrong. I've never been more certain of anything in my life. Marcus Williams deserves this inheritance because he's exactly what this world needs, more of a good man trying his best in a hard world. And if giving him the resources to keep being good makes my death mean something, then that's a legacy worth leaving. He sat back, his expression softening. Marcus, if you're watching this, you're probably terrified. Good. It means you understand the weight of what I've given you. But don't let fear stop you from doing what I know you can do. Build something that matters. Make the Riverside Diner into what Maggie's restaurants used to be. A place where people matter more than profit. Where kindness is the currency that counts. Theodore smiled, and for a moment he looked like the man in the old photographs, strong, certain, fully alive. And to everyone else watching this, if you think Marcus manipulated me, you don't know me at all. Nobody manipulates Theodore Lancaster. I chose Marcus, and I'd choose him again. The video ended. The room was dead silent. Anderson let the silence hang for a long moment, then spoke. Theodore Lancaster was examined by 3 board-certified physicians in the weeks before his death. All confirmed his mental competency. His decision was made with full knowledge and understanding. The accusations being made by Justin Lancaster are not based on evidence, but on entitlement. And we will not stand by while a good man's reputation is destroyed by people who can't accept that their father loved them enough to protect his legacy from their poor judgment. His voice turned sharp as a blade. This press conference is over. We will not be taking questions. But I will say this, any further harassment of Marcus Williams or his daughter will be met with legal action. Any media outlet that publishes unsubstantiated accusations will be sued for defamation. Theodore Lancaster made his choice. The law supports that choice. And this matter is closed. He stepped away from the podium, and the room erupted. reporters shouting questions, cameras flashing chaos. Anderson and Park flanked Marcus and escorted him out through a side door away from the mob. In the elevator, Marcus couldn't speak, couldn't process what had just happened. Theodore's face on that screen, his voice echoing through the conference room, defending Marcus even from beyond the grave. "That should shut them up," Park said with satisfaction. "Will it stop the investigation?" Marcus asked. "It won't hurt. DA's office watches the press like everyone else. Theodore made a compelling case. They'll have a hard time arguing he was incompetent after that." The elevator doors opened and they stepped into the lobby. Marcus's phone was already buzzing with texts, numbers he didn't recognize, messages flooding in. One stood out. From Ronnie at the diner, "Just saw the news." "Holy shit, man. Call me." Marcus stepped outside and called. Ronnie picked up on the first ring. "Is it true, all of it?" "Yeah, it's true." "Theodore Lancaster." The Theodore Lancaster was the old guy in the corner booth. "Yeah." Ronnie was quiet for a moment. "You doing okay?" The question, simple and genuine, nearly broke Marcus. "I don't know. This is all so crazy, Ronnie. I keep thinking I'm going to wake up and it'll all be a dream." "It's not a dream. And Marcus, for what it's worth, I believe you. That video, that was a man who knew exactly what he was doing. Anyone who says different is full of shit." "Thanks, man. That means a lot." "So, what happens now? You coming back to the diner?" Marcus looked up at the glass tower where Anderson's office was, then at the city spreading out around him, steel and stone, and millions of people who didn't know his name but had already decided what kind of person he was. "I don't know. I own the diner now. Theodore left it to me. Along with enough money to fix it up, make it better." "No shit. So you're the boss now?" "I guess I am." Ronnie laughed. "Raymond's going to lose his mind." "Raymond fired me, remember?" "Even better. You gonna keep the place running?" Marcus thought about Theodore's video, about Maggie's restaurants, about the promise to build something that mattered. Yeah, I am. But different. Better. The way it should be." "Well, when you're ready, I'm in. Someone's got to teach you how to actually run a kitchen." They hung up, and Marcus stood on the sidewalk, watching people rush past on their way to wherever people rush to, and felt something shift inside him. The fear was still there, the investigation, the public scrutiny, the weight of expectations he'd never asked for. But underneath the fear was something else. Purpose. Theodore hadn't just left him money. He'd left him a mission. A chance to prove that kindness wasn't weakness, that dignity mattered, that places like the Riverside Diner could be more than just diners, they could be communities, families, home. His phone rang. Unknown number, but he answered anyway. "Mr. Williams, this is Karen Reeves. I've been instructed to inform you that based on the medical evidence and Mr. Lancaster's video testimony, we're closing our investigation. No charges will be filed." Marcus's knees nearly gave out. "What?" "You're cleared, Mr. Williams. The DA watched the press conference and reviewed all available evidence. There's nothing here. Justin Lancaster's accusations are unfounded." "Thank you. God, thank you." "You should know we're also looking into Mr. Justin Lancaster for filing a false police report. The accusations he made were serious and without merit. That has consequences." She hung up, and Marcus stood there in the Manhattan afternoon, his phone in his hand, and felt tears streaming down his face. It was over. The investigation was over. He wasn't going to prison. He wasn't going to lose Zoe. He called Anderson immediately. "I heard," Anderson said, and Marcus could hear the smile in his voice. "Congratulations, Marcus. You're officially a free man." "What happens to Justin?" "He'll probably get a slap on the wrist, maybe a fine. But his reputation is destroyed. No one in business will touch him after this. Theodore protected you even from the grave." That night, Marcus took Zoe to dinner at a nice restaurant. Not fancy, but nicer than they'd ever been able to afford. She ordered chicken fingers and lemonade, and told him about her day with Sarah, completely oblivious to the storm that had been raging around her father. Sarah said we might not have to stay at the hotel much longer. She said you're looking for a new place to live. Maybe. Would you like that, a new place? Zoe considered this seriously. Can I have my own room, with space for my dragon drawings? Baby girl, you can have whatever you want. I want a room, and I want you to not be sad anymore. She looked at him with those two knowing eyes. You've been sad for a long time, Daddy. Even before Mr. Theodore. But now you look different. Less sad. Marcus reached across the table and took her small hand. You know why I'm less sad? Why? Because I've got you. And because I finally understand that sometimes good things happen to good people. It just takes a while. Mr. Theodore was good people too, right? Yeah, baby. He was. I miss him. Me too. They finished dinner and walked back to the hotel hand in hand, and for the first time in weeks, Marcus felt like he could breathe. The investigation was over. The accusations were proved false. Theodore's video had given him something priceless, not just legal protection, but validation. The world had seen Theodore's face, heard his voice, understood that this wasn't a scam or a manipulation, but a deliberate choice made by a brilliant man who knew exactly what he was doing. 2 weeks later, Marcus stood in front of the Riverside Diner with Anderson and Ronnie, and a contractor named Mike Chen, who'd been recommended by Dr. Chen. It needs everything, Mike said, walking through the space with a critical eye. New kitchen equipment, new flooring, electrical work, plumbing upgrades. You're looking at 3 months of work minimum, maybe 4. How much? Ballpark $250,000. Could be more, depending on what we find when we open up the walls. Marcus didn't even blink. 6 months ago, that number would have been impossible, unthinkable. Now, it was just the cost of doing business. Do it. Whatever it needs. I want this place to be somewhere people feel welcome. Somewhere they matter. What about the menu? Ronnie asked. We keeping it the same or changing things up? Marcus thought about Maggie's restaurants, about Theodore's dream, about what he wanted the Riverside Diner to become. We keep the classics, the eggs and bacon, the coffee, the toast. But we add new things. Real food made with care. Nothing fancy, nothing pretentious. Just good, honest meals at fair prices. The kind of place where a construction worker and a CEO can sit at the counter together and both feel at home. That's a nice dream, Ronnie said. Think we can pull it off? We have to. Theodore believed I could do this. I'm not going to let him down. Anderson cleared his throat. There's something else we need to discuss. The apartment on 5th Avenue. You still haven't decided what to do with it. Marcus had been avoiding that decision. The apartment felt like Theodore's space, sacred somehow. Moving in felt presumptuous. I can't live there. You don't have to live there, but you could use it. The study, all of Theodore's papers, his files, his records of building Lancaster Global. That's an education worth millions, Marcus. You want to understand business, understand how to protect what he left you. That's where you start. Marcus looked at the diner, dingy, outdated, desperately in need of renovation, but still standing still, solid underneath the wear. Okay, I'll use the study. Learn what I can. But I'm not moving in. That place is too big, too cold. It wasn't a home. It was where Theodore went to be alone. Fair enough. Anderson pulled out a folder. One more thing. The Lancaster Legacy Fund. Theodore set aside $10 million to create a foundation that supports small businesses and workers in the restaurant industry. He wanted you to run it. $10 million to give away. The number didn't even feel real. What do I do? Whatever you think Maggie would have wanted. Grants for people starting restaurants, scholarships for culinary school, emergency funds for workers who get sick or hurt. You build what Theodore couldn't, a safety net for people like you used to be. Marcus took the folder, feeling the weight of it. Not just paper, but responsibility. Legacy. The chance to take Theodore's fortune and turn it into something that actually helped people. I'll need help. I don't know anything about running a foundation. That's what Rebecca Torres is for. She'll handle the financial side. You just make the decisions about who to help and how. That night, Marcus sat in Theodore's study. His study. Now he had to start thinking of it that way, and looked at the corkboard still hanging on the wall. All those photos, all those notes, all that careful documentation of one lonely man's last attempt to leave something good behind. Marcus picked up a marker and wrote on the board, Year 1 goals. Underneath he listed Renovate Diner, hire good people, create legacy fund, learn how to honor what Theodore built. And at the bottom, don't forget why this matters. Never stop seeing people. He stepped back and looked at the board at his handwriting next to Theodore's at the beginning of something he couldn't quite envision yet, but knew in his bones was important. His phone buzzed. Text from Zoe via Sarah's phone. Good night, Daddy. I love you. Marcus typed back. Love you too, baby girl. See you tomorrow. Tomorrow. For 3 years, tomorrow had been just another day of struggle, another shift at the diner, another month of barely scraping by. Now tomorrow was possibility, opportunity, the chance to build something that mattered. Marcus turned off the lights in the study and walked through the quiet apartment past the priceless art and the empty rooms and headed back to the hotel where his daughter was sleeping. Where his real life was. Theodore had given him wealth. But more than that, he'd given him permission to dream again. To believe that someone like Marcus, a single father, a waiter, a man who'd never had anything go right, could be worthy of good things. And Marcus was going to prove him right. Not just for Theodore. Not just for Zoe. But for everyone who'd ever felt invisible, forgotten, like they didn't matter. He was going to build a place where everyone mattered. Starting tomorrow.